Welcome everyone to our webinar today. Marcus, it's great to see you again.
Hey, it's good to be here.
We are going to talk to all of you today about evaluating your client list. We know, like many of you, that capacity is a common challenge inside of our firms, and evaluating your client list is a solution to combating that capacity challenge. So before we dive in, let's get into some logistics. First off, if we don't have the pleasure of knowing you just yet, I am Amy McCarty, Director of Operations here at Dillon Business Advisors, and with me is Marcus Dillon, President. So you're in good hands today. We'll share knowledge of what we've learned, struggles, successes inside of Dillon Business Advisors as it relates to evaluating client list, and then some other tips and tricks for you. So our goal today, actually, let me back up. Kind of blew right through that. You get one CPE if you want CPE today. There are two handouts for you in the GoToWebinar panel. There is a PETA Excel file. All of you should know what PETA stands for, but it is an acronym. Use your imagination. And then there is the handout of the PowerPoint deck. So you have this if you want to take it back, share it with others inside of the firm. In order to give you CPE credit, we have polls that we'll be asking throughout the session. Even if you don't need CPE, please answer those polls to the best of your knowledge. It's just helpful. One, for Marcus and I, as we're going through today, to make sure that the information we're covering is relevant to you. If you have specific questions, by all means, we welcome them. Fire them through the questions panel. Rachel is behind the scenes. So she will be answering those questions, or we'll be addressing them verbally, whatever makes sense there. So say hi to Rachel if you want to through that questions panel. And then at the end, we have a survey. If you would mind sharing, your feedback is very valuable to us. We want to make sure that we're sharing information that helps you, because our ultimate goal is to help others inside of the industry. All right, what are we going to cover today, Marcus?
We can talk about anything, I think, but yeah, today we're actually going to be talking about something that's widely talked about in our industry. Probably a lot of topics that we've heard before in some fashion, but maybe today it just hits a little bit different. So the first one is just outlining the necessary data that you need from your clients to make decisions on those relationships. And then the second, we're actually going to go into real world, how to categorize or grade clients. And then that third piece is just, what do you do with the clients that no longer fit? So this topic is always relevant, especially at this time of year on the second half of the year. You know, you don't want to go through some of these client relationships again in 2025. Maybe you've told yourself that year after year after year. The other reason why this is relevant, especially in our world as like CFOs and advising clients, is a lot of this discussion we're also having with our clients about their customers. So what you've learned and applied in your business, just carbon copying it, use it as your own advice, own it, if you will. So really good, timely information. And so if you want to think about it that way today, we could also approach it from the client lens.
Yeah, I think that's a good, it's a good reminder. Sometimes the advice we're giving our clients is what we should really just be sitting across the table from ourselves during that conversation, right? Walking away from it and realizing, you know, I should actually should take some of that.
Sometimes the mirror is the scariest scene, right? You know, it's one of those pieces.
Cue some music. All right, let's just talk capacity challenge, just challenges, right? And it pertains to capacity. So warning signs that capacity is potentially an issue inside of your firm. I think many of you can relate to at least one of these. Which one's the one that
you asking me if I can relate to them? Because I can relate to all of them at some point in my career, or as owning a business. And now it's the lens of, as a leader, how can I avoid these items, right?
Yeah. Are any of these warning signs still popping up for you, Marcus?
Depends on the hour, right? So I think the people that are joining us today, you are not alone in this. Even though we are here presenting, we are in the arena with you doing this on a daily basis. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that it's just a matter of getting a little bit better, not perfect at this, and improving year over year or month over month as you go.
Yeah, definitely a slow game, right? For the long haul. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So
Yeah.
tweak as we go. Okay, so let's jump a little bit further then. Ultimately, as we think about capacity issues inside of our firms, as our capacity starts to diminish, right? It decreases the availability that we have. Our client list can only be so big, right? We only have so much room there. And so the way that we mitigate capacity decreasing is to put higher priority on a client list evaluation.
Yeah.
And so that leads us to the first poll that I'd love Rachel to launch for us, for all of you. And so that first poll really pertains to, when is the last time, and let's be honest, this is a safe space, right? When is the last time that your firm's client list was evaluated?
We need to break this out for our overachievers, maybe by quarter as well.
That'll be version 2, Marcus.
Okay.
I mean, that brings up a good point though on timing of how often you're doing it. Initially to start, you're shooting for at least once a year, but ideal would be 2 times a year.
Yeah.
Right? All right, let's see our results. So it looks like the majority is 2024, which is awesome. That is great to hear. Followed next by 2022 or prior. So thank you everyone for sharing that, being honest, for those of you that have never evaluated the client list.
Yeah. It's crazy to think that it's August 15th of 2024. So yeah, it's good to see that number, but also you've got a lot less time this year if you're trying to squeeze it into this year than you did.
Yeah. Although, we could be doing this evaluation right now or right after 10:15, ideally before, right? So we can action on it after 10:15 deadline.
Yep. Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that.
So we have Emily Sheridan. I won't share last name, but Emily Sheridan, that just because we've evaluated it doesn't mean that we've done anything with those evaluations. So that is the key, right? You can do all the analysis you want, but if there's no action on the other side of the analysis, then why did we spend all of that time?
And that's actually a really good point. I've been in other venues where that was openly discussed with firm leaders and firm staff, somebody that wasn't in a leadership position. And by doing that, there's just a lot of frustration by getting somebody's input, getting the list, so to speak, but then never taking action. I mean, I think that's way more frustrating to those people that are involved versus just not ever asking their opinion, right? So I think I would encourage any leader, if you're going to start this process, to actually follow through and be ready to make the necessary cuts if those do exist.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into just what do we need? What is the information that we need to make sure we have in order to successfully analyze the list? And I want to start with just what are we collecting? Then we'll get into, okay, how are we analyzing this? And then we'll wrap up with, all right, now let's action. For those of you that have done this already, what's the action on the other side of it? So there's multiple things that we're collecting here. Ultimately, what we're looking for is a way for you to gather all of this data to make it easier for you to analyze. Maybe that's coming out of your practice management solution. Maybe you're hodgepodging it together with multiple Excel sheets that you're pulling out. Maybe you're doing it in QBO. I mean, it could look different for every firm. That part doesn't matter. What matters is that we're able to get this data. So first thing is clients grouped by family. Marcus, talk to us about why grouped by family is the important classification there.
Yeah, relationships are very important. We know that. And in your client list, it's no different. So more than likely, you've got some connected clients or some connected engagements. And from our own previous experiences, you don't want to make the mistake of grading a portion of that client family one grade and not looking at it holistically across the board. In the past, in the years past, I have fired or blocked and sold sisters of really good clients, relatives, if you will. And it was just one of those things where if you back up and look at your complete list of engagements by task and not by client family relationship, you could make a bad decision on something that you have to work through in an awkward moment like I have had to do before. So, and then also the other piece there is family groups. Client concentration is a very real thing. We see that, if you're going through succession planning, anything like that, they do reduce the valuation of your firm given client concentration. So that's maybe something good to see. If it's over a certain percentage, maybe 10%, it does get held against you because a lot of your revenue comes from one place. So it's just helpful to know client concentration data throughout the life of the business, and especially as other things come up, like succession planning. So just another reason to evaluate clients by family. The last piece I can probably add to why we do it by family is because we want our team to fully serve that family and have all the knowledge base for that family within a smaller subset of team members here at DBA. So that's a lot of the reasoning and a lot of the, I guess, experiences that we've worked through the years, and kind of boil it down to just those 3 or 4 points.
Yeah, that's perfect. Then we want a rolling 12 months of revenue for the client. And again, we're grouping it by family, as Marcus, you just explained there. But the rolling 12 months is something that you've mentioned before, like wrapping our heads around pulling the rolling 12 instead of calendar year, which is.
Yeah, I think as accountants, we love 12/31 fiscal year, calendar year end dates, right? That's how we were programmed and trained. In the new world we live in, especially with CAS and recurring revenue, you have to look at rolling 12 months, or maybe even rolling 12 plus a little bit of projected into the next period, because maybe you've signed on that engagement and you've only captured a few months, but it is a ongoing engagement. So you want to factor that in to your analysis. And so rolling 12 is just a better indication of where things are at. The one asterisk I would add is, obviously, with the type of work that some CPAs do on the tax side, maybe you have 2 tax return engagements within a rolling 12. And so you just have to identify if that is the case. But yeah, if you set it the right way and are able to identify, okay, this is what a normal rolling 12 would look like, and remove that one-off engagement that you built for in addition to a normal year in this last 12 months, I think you're going to be really good to determine what the right action is.
Yeah, if there's any anomalies, right? Otherwise, analyzing your client lists can happen anytime because you're always looking, comparing apples to apples, taking out any of those anomalies there. But
Right.
okay, so we have groups by family, looking at revenue. We also want industry in there, and industry is helpful for us to just kind of gauge how all over the place we are, or not all over the place we are, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I review a lot of other firms' websites. I kind of find that interesting in my sick little world that I live in. But when I go to a firm's website and I see what they specialize in, and I see every single industry listed there, all the way from nonprofits to professional services to school districts, it just means that there's probably some lack of clarity within that firm. And if they're willing to accept anybody, then it's just, hey, there is no ideal client, because anything is an ideal client. And that's just not really good in the world that we live in today. So industry helps you identify where you are building niche specialty. And, that's talked about a lot in the accounting world, the CPA world, especially as it relates to CAS. And we believe in that just because you can build up some industry knowledge, especially within teams, and they can go serve certain industries really, really well and see very similar things from client to client once they do build out that industry specialty. So starting within your client list and identifying what industries you already have, once you know that, maybe it's a little bit easier to start marketing to those industries and then building out your teams to go serve those industries that you're marketing to. And I know that, DBA, we actually just went through this process for the families that we serve on a monthly basis. And Amy, I know that we were, depending on, where we were in a time, we still do have quite a few different industries here at DBA.
We're not necessarily marketing to all of those industries, but we definitely still are comprised of quite a few. We don't have the exact number.
It's less than 10.
Is it less than 10? Okay.
Yeah. And if you go to our website, which I know a lot of people have visited, you'll see that we market to very few industries, right? So elevator speech is dentists, doctors, and vets. That's really easy. That's who we want. That's ideal. So, but do I serve a home builder who is a friend on a monthly basis? Yeah, I do. And we're not accepting any new home builders, but I have a relationship with him and he pays me a fair amount to where we're going to keep that relationship for the time being. So I think it's just good to know that data and just be able to use that and move forward with, building the business or reshaping the business, if you will.
Yeah, and we're sharing a lot of, how you're going to analyze it once you have this data. So we're kind of intermingling these two if you're just now joining. But it is having the data in front of you and the ability to just look at it actually helps significantly as you're looking at lists, analyzing lists, seeing some easy decisions to make. So the next thing would be just what services are they currently using from your firm, right? And getting a list of that. That's also eye-opening, I think, for.
And maybe how you could start here, if you've never done this before, you haven't done it in a while, and you're just kind of, well, we do so much for everybody. Really think about it in annual engagements or monthly engagements. You could even have quarterly if you're kind of bridging that gap from annual to monthly. Think about it. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of tax-only engagements like we used to have. It's really good to know if you have annual tax, and you have an AT, let's say, for your current service offering, those start to stick out, especially if that one line item for that one person has annual tax beside it and they have no other relationship, they have no other opportunity to move to a better service offering, then it's going to make the decision a little bit easier on what we do with that client moving forward.
Yep. And then the current team servicing those clients, right? And those family groups.
And this is where we really want, whenever you're going through this process, we really want you to be honest, because if that client is only here because of the leader or the owner of the firm, that is just not something that we can maintain long-term, grow, scale, if you will. And it helps to identify that. So if that person calls and they only want to speak to the owner or the leader of a firm, that also weighs into the decision we need to make. And you can test that on the other side of this grading. You can start to delegate things and elevate other team members to serve that client and see how that client reacts. Or you can just make the decision, hey, we're just no longer the best fit. So I think those are some things to kind of think through. If you have built out teams, and we talk about team of 3 model at DBA, but if you built out some teams, then this is easier to kind of identify those industries, kind of identify capacity and who has available capacity per team. That's where we're at today. And we wouldn't be where we're at today without doing just all of some of this elementary basic stuff to get there.
Yeah. The last thing is asking the team for feedback. And you talked a little bit just a few minutes ago, Marcus, about being in a room at an event, I think, where they talked about evaluating clients in front of leaders and team members. And then when action doesn't happen, that's more frustrating. here collecting this data is your team members are working with these clients. And so are there things that are happening that, you know, they aren't telling you right away? There's a lot going on. It's tax season. It's busy. Everybody's busy, right? But is there an opportunity to circle back and ask, like, okay, share your thoughts. Is there a concern on any of the clients that you work with? We have, and I'll share it in just a second here, the PETA Excel handout is a variation of what we actually use internally. So Deidre on our team, right, Marcus, she tracks some of this, and she's our tax administrator and talks to and works with all of our clients during tax deadlines. She keeps a list of anyone. And then Marcus, you and her go through that, right?
She keeps her own list, and I'm not going to trump Deidre. You know, I think if Deidre, if you've ever met Deidre, she is the sweetest, most even-going person on our team, probably in our life. And if Deidre doesn't get along with you, like, it's time. So I think those are the pieces. The team is very crucial in this exercise, because if you can give away this grading to someone that's not involved in the billing, and they don't have that emotion of revenue tied to this, that's what we would highly recommend, just to have an independent view of it. And then you can come together with maybe someone who is involved with the revenue side or the billing and this list, if you will. I will say that, yes, I've been in some rooms where people have even left firms because they've talked about exiting clients year after year, and then the leaders never did anything with it. So they just got frustrated and left. But then I've also heard really good stories where that team member, the thing they look back on the most in their career is when maybe a leader sided with them and valued them more than the client and just said, okay, that client's got to go and they've got to go today. And so that's what we actually did with this scenario. Like, this is an actual client on our—
Not the name. The name
yeah,
is
not a
ABC
name.
company.
And it was a family group. So I think this client was a tax family. So we served them through a few different projects. I want to say that they were probably about $10,000 to $12,000 a year. Really good margins on that work, because I only saw them once a year. They were kind of in the groove of working with our team. So there just wasn't a lot of ongoing maintenance, and it was just doing those annual tax returns. So between all the tax returns, it was about 12,000. So I would have graded this client completely different. And then Deidre had her list where she said, you know, hey, the last time this client dropped off, it's kind of been building to this, but the last time it got really weird because they wouldn't even get out of their car. They rolled their window down just a bit, called Deidre to come out, and then handed their tax documents to Deidre through the window while Deidre stood in the rain. And so, like, that's unacceptable, you know, for any team member, especially a female team member, to kind of be in that situation. So once again, like, you just want all the knowledge, the collective knowledge from your team to be able to make some of these decisions.
Yeah, so what's going on this list is really just the ones that cause concern, which are the easiest for people to identify, right? I mean, you could walk into a team meeting and ask everybody to bring one PETA client on their list, and everybody's probably going to have one to list.
Yeah, I know of another firm that actually on a staff's birthday, they get one client to fire. And I think that's pretty cool. So maybe there's some firms on this list that, like, they do cool things already, and if you want to share those, and that way we can share them. But yeah, every year on your birthday, you could pick a client. You know, hey, if it aligns with the overall plan of the firm, they're no longer on the bus. And maybe that's the client that you do a heavy sigh on when you see that email or phone call come through, or you slam the receiver down, depending on what phone you use. Most of us don't have desktop phones, so you don't want to slam your iPhone on the desk. But I think those are the pieces that you can keep in mind to kind of keep this fun and light. And it just shows that you value your team much more than you do your clients.
Yeah, without your team, then you won't be able to serve clients, right? So.
Right.
Yeah, Stephanie agrees. Fire and flying on your birthday.
But I don't want to be involved in that firm. You know, that's me every day. So.
Yeah. Is there anything that any of you attending today would add to this list for collecting. We've got 6 things listed out there, just an opportunity to share in the questions panel if you have anything else that you'd like to add, and we'll make sure we share that with the group.
Yeah.
We're going to move along though, as we've been kind of sprinkling in, like going through and analyzing this data. Let's talk about just trying to keep this as simple as possible so it's not an overwhelming task, right? We don't want this to be overwhelming, but it is definitely something that needs to be done for those of you that haven't done it in a while or have never done it. So it really gets broken out into 3 main areas, which Marcus, you've already touched on, like revenue by client family, looking to see if there's a large percentage coming from a certain family group. How are you typically sorting this list? Are you starting with highest revenue at the top and working your way down? Are you looking at lowest revenue? What's your strategy?
Yeah, so and you know, at the event we had in April in the Woodlands, I actually opened up my laptop and our QBO file and did this live for those that are in the room. There's going to be a couple opportunities in the fall for me to do that again. I don't know if I'm going to be that transparent in a public setting, but maybe if you come to our event, we can do that again. But once the client families are grouped, then yes, like collapse that into that one family line item, run a customer sales report out of QBO or your practice management, however you're running that, and then see how much that one client family makes up in, you know, recurring revenue or revenue over the last 12 months. And we did that live in our QBO file, and we have one client family. They're an outlier, but we have one client family that spends hundreds of thousands of dollars with our firm. They have a lot of projects, and we have served them in a certain way to continue to make client service, you know, really high mark. And with that, then we kind of go down, and then we see like, hey, we've got all the way down to these lower clients are only spending, you know, $6,000 to $7,000, maybe $10,000 with us per year. We've just continued to work the model up. And that's where it does make some of those easier decisions, especially whenever you go back to the way that we as accountants were trained and just looking at the numbers, the pure black and white data. You could even probably remove the client name and just see the amounts and then make decisions. So I think there's a few different ways once you have that data grouped appropriately to really make the best decision without emotion involved. So starting with client revenue is always easiest, or that's always what I start with. And then you also look at if we've added those industries in and we only have, let's say, one landscaping client, and that landscaping client has weekly payroll, they've got turnover like nobody else, they aren't necessarily the most profitable engagement because of how often we're having to deal with them, then you can make some easy decisions based on industry as well. And then finally, it's that service offering. So if we've identified some of those annual tax, if that's what we're trying to move away from, if we don't have the business set up to continue to grow that way, then that's the capacity that we're going to take and turn into capacity for monthly recurring or these other engagements that we want to go do. And that's kind of the way that we shift the business, whether it's over time or it's very fast. That's up to you as a leader. But once you've kind of put those starting blocks in place, if you will, it makes these decisions a little bit easier. And this is kind of that next step.
Which the key there is when you're analyzing this, you're not analyzing it for what the firm was and has operated over the previous years. You're making decisions based on what you want the firm to continue to evolve to, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah. As much as we want to look back and celebrate things or even celebrate survival in certain seasons of business ownership, you definitely want this list and this data to help project and build out the future that you've mapped out, that you can already visualize. So if you visualize 12 months from now, I want 80% monthly recurring of X amount of dollars, and I only want to serve, you know, 10 industries with a core of 4 to 5 that we can market to. Having those goals defined helps you identify the end result of where you want to go within the next year. And so I think this is all of the pieces that, you know, hey, if we're going to the beach this weekend, I don't need to take my overcoat because that's not going with me on this journey to where we're going in the beach. And so it's no different than clients. If you are not going to be equipped and have the capacity to serve those annual clients next tax season, we need to address that now and kind of do them a service to where they can go find their next best option as far as service provider.
Yeah. All right, let's do another poll. Rachel will launch one for us, and this poll is really just about how many industries you serve, not how many industries you're marketing to based on the conversation we just had, but how many are you serving with your current client base? So we're in that 5 to 10 range is where DBA is.
And we used to be a lot more. I don't want to know how bad we used to be. You don't want to look back that far.
Eyes forward.
Yeah.
It looks like right now, just based on responses coming in, I know not everyone has voted just yet, but it looks like more than 10 is currently in the winning.
Yeah.
So what are we at? We're like 53% have more than 10 industries.
Yeah. And that's really good. So the less than 5 had 0. And I can remember back during the pandemic, we follow a lot of firms that only serve dental clients. And even those firms that do that really, really well and market to it on a national basis, they have other industries they serve most likely. I felt really, bad for some of those firms because those clients were shut down and they didn't know what they were doing and it was scrambling. And I'm like, oh, thank God we have these other industries that, are kind of safe, if you will. And you can apply that logic to other things. Like if you have all clients that are going to be replaced by technology or AI and you have no blue collar, then like, man, we need to go grow our blue collar a little bit, because that's who's going to be here long term, if that's the way that you think. So the other thing in that poll that I love to see is that last one where I'll have that answer after this webinar. And if you need some accountability on having that answer, just reach out to Rachel and we'll email you after this webinar just to follow up. But we're so busy and a lot of times we're in these webinars and then as soon as we're over, we're back to our email. So would highly encourage you, if you have some action on the other side of this webinar, schedule it now and go do that before the end of the week.
Rachel will be good at cracking the whip on you.
Yeah, Rachel doesn't have much on her plate right now. She's got a lot of excess capacity. Just waiting for her to come off mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're just checking to see if she's still paying attention, right? All right, grading the clients. Let's get into it. Let's keep it simple. It doesn't need to be like a super complicated system, right? And you can just use a letter system. In our world, it's A, B, C, D. Those letters may change in the future. They may become like AAA, AA, and A as we continue to upgrade all of our clients to A. But let's just talk through what each of these letters mean here. So for A clients, in its simplest form, right? These are clients that are at the right price. You've analyzed the data, looked at billings. They're utilizing the right services that your firm wants to continue offer going forward, and they didn't make it onto the PIA list. So they're good to work with, right? Is that fair, Marcus?
No, it's great. Right, good. And that's whenever you think about ideal clients, you have an avatar. So maybe that's the other A in your mind of who that client is. And that's who you go after as far as your service level is concerned. So I think A is pretty self-explanatory as far as right price. You could always price increase them or adjust based on scope, but they're fairly, good. And then services, the team that's serving them is well structured, and then they're just good to work with.
So then that brings us to B. So the only difference with B is that they're not utilizing the services that we really want them to be using.
Yeah, B is probably where your most opportunity lies. And these are just the good people that maybe they came into the firm at a time whenever you didn't have service offerings clearly identified on where you wanted to go. And you need to have that other conversation with, hey, let's move you from an annual touch point to a monthly touch point, or we could be doing this for you. And that falls on the leadership to actually have those conversations. So when you look at B, that's really where a lot of opportunity lies. Because it's wrong services, that's usually an internal experiment or internal job that needs to be done, having that conversation. And so I think A and B are kind of self-explanatory, but obviously B, there's a lot of hope in those.
Yeah, opportunity to move them to A. So then we get to C, and C is wrong, good, essentially.
Yeah. So C may be those people that came in that you either acquired through an acquisition or, was referred in and you took it, just because of the relationship in some manner. They're good people, and this is where emotion could usually become involved. So we like to boil it down to black and white. So if they're not priced right, if it's not a service that you're able to scale or grow with a team, then they would fall into C. So I think that's the difference between B and C, is really looking at some of the black and white data.
Yeah. And then we get to D, which is all around not good to work with.
Yeah, and D, those are the people, like we said earlier, like they're the easy decisions. Like you would not refer them to your competitor down the street or try to block and monetize them just because they just need to go. And maybe you do refer them to the firm that you compete against a little bit, just to kind of give you some more capacity and let them deal with it. But they are not able to move forward with the firm in any aspect. Did we dance? Did you drop, or?
I was trying to hit unmute and I turned off the webcam instead.
Okay. I thought I was about to go solo. I was like, all right, giddy up, let's go.
No, D, I just wanted to add that it doesn't matter what their price is or what service they're offering. If they made it onto that PETA list, then.
So I will say this, like once you've graded those clients and maybe you looked at it revenue by family, like if your largest client is a D client, oh man, like we need to do some work. Like we can time out when they leave. Like, don't get me wrong, like you don't have to go give all your blood and die. But let's work through that. Let's build it up. But if you've identified them as a D, you've had multiple conversations, like it's probably better for your health to exit that very large relationship and just go be motivated to build back. And you'd be amazed at how much time and energy you do have once they are gone. So just a few talking points there, but it does help to know how much that D client spends with you on a annual basis.
Mm-hmm. For the plan on the other side of it. I think though, to add to that is, any of you listening that have a D client that falls into that situation, you know what you need to do with them, and you've known for quite some time. So permission granted to continue figuring that out.
If emotion's clouding you and you've done it internally at your team, take that client list home and let your spouse decide. It's like one of those, maybe your spouse is at the office too. We know how that works, but it is sometimes good to get outside opinion.
All right, so I know that we just launched a poll, but I want to ask another one here. And this one is, even if you haven't gone through and graded your clients recently, what we would love to hear from you is where do you think your largest percentage of clients fall in that grading? So based on what we just went through, maybe you use a different grading scale, but either you know this or you're just going to give your best guess estimate. Where's your highest percentage?
And I'm so thankful the way that this is coming in, that we have 0 in the D column. If that was the case, I was going to say, hey, why don't you just go sell your firm and go work somewhere else? Like, probably be a lot happier, but nobody's here today.
Everyone has done a good job of churning out those Ds for the most part.
Yeah.
There's always going to be a couple that creep up.
Yeah.
Hopefully not, but.
And I love to see the results. Obviously, A is the least amount out of the 3 that do have results. So As Amy mentioned, once you get all A clients, you're not done grading. Like you can actually continue to grade your clients, and that's whenever you get into AA, triple A. If you follow baseball, you could follow that, kind of grading system, if you will, to grade clients. And then everybody's an A client. They just may not be the best A client. So B, that's really hopeful to see the results today, because like that is where a ton of opportunity lies. So hopefully on the other side of this exercise, you are able to go transform those relationships into the right service offering, because if you remember, that was the only thing that was off, was the service offering, that they typically do have the right amount of funds and they value the relationship. And then C, those are the emotional ones. So those are the ones that you just have to really be committed to exiting, just because it's not the best long-term solution for them or for you and your team. So I love to see those results.
Yeah, that's perfect. All right, so we've done the easy part of this, is what I'll say, right? We've collected the data, we've analyzed it, we know, we have ideas of what it is that we need to be doing. Let's dive a little bit deeper into those ideas, and then like, what's the action, right? The most important piece of this is actioning on your client list evaluation. So after we're done grading, we're just going to kind of talk through, and we've been already sharing this, so I'll elaborate a little bit more. What are we doing with each category that we've graded? If your letters are slightly different or number system, just correlate to what we have here. So for our A's, they're our best clients. If we have to take any action, it might just be continuing to increase fees on the regular basis like we have been doing, right, Marcus?
Yeah, I think if that's the first point in A, the firms that do get to all A clients, then we can do really cool things like, is the team structure the right way for these clients, just to maximize profitability? I think those are the things that we can look at once you have A and maybe some B clients. But then, if they're the right price, we're just trying to add more of that, add more value, and then add more profit to the bottom line.
Perfect. So then we get into B's. And so B's, right, everything except for just wrong service, and tons of opportunity in your B clients. So some ideas here.
Yeah.
Increasing fees, right? Adding services.
Yeah, and these are the clients, they can frustrate you as well. So even though they're graded a B, if you go to them multiple times and offer to get them into where the firm needs to go or is going, and they give you a response like, hey, I'm glad that benefits you, but that doesn't benefit me at all. I'm already getting great service from your team, so I'm good. I'm gonna stay at the service offering that I am. I would recommend giving them like 2 or 3 times to give you that answer before you act on, hey, you're a great person, love you, we'll go get lunch sometime. I have a great referral for you, because like we are going this way. And you can do that in a way where animosity doesn't build. If you keep these B clients too long and you are truly motivated to reshape your firm, animosity in that relationship will just naturally occur.
So give them 3 opportunities to migrate.
We're on the baseball theme, so 3 strikes and you're out, So I think that's the piece where continue to do that, whether it's year after year or how often you're meeting with those clients. And then by that 3rd time, if they tell you no again, it's time.
Yeah. So then that leads us to C's. So we still have some opportunity with C clients potentially, although they're wrong price and wrong service.
So C client, those of y'all that have followed the DBA story and know, where we've blocked and sold and exited client blocks, those are C clients, and they're great people. They're not the D clients. Those are the C clients, just because they no longer fit where the firm is going. They're taking up space on the bus or the airplane, however you want to talk about that. Like, it's just, they're no longer going on the journey with us. And so with that, we're trying to get them over to their best option as far as service provider. You can try some of this. We've done that in stages, and The other analogy I'll always use, you can't give all of your blood at once. So if you've, exited the D clients and a few C clients, like, okay, let's just go and reshape some of those C relationships. Maybe they'll move up to A and B. But overall, in this C column, the temporary pain that may exist from them no longer being on the bus is no equal to the long-term gain that the firm will experience by just moving forward.
What's an example of experimenting with ideas with these C clients? Because you've done some experimentation, right?
Oh, all the time, so I think you really have to know B and C is opportunity. So you can't just write off a B client, you can't write off a C client. You have to know what's really going on. Is one of those C clients looking to go buy a business? Could you get them into a 1040 plus or AIM model like we have and continue to consult with them while they go evaluate that business? That business becomes a CAS client. Like, those are the opportunities that exist in B and C clients. So I think it is still knowing your client base to be able to do things like that and experiment with different packages. Obviously, you don't want to roll out a package if you have no capacity internally to do that package. You just need to stay focused on the type of firm you're growing.
You experiment with some fee increases with them, see
Oh
like
yeah,
where
all the
they
time.
bulk at.
Experiment with fee increase on everybody, So I think that's the piece where that is the one constant in every single one of these is, if you're not raising price every year, inflation is a very real thing and you're making less money.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's A, B, and C. Then we got our Ds. We know what we need to do with our D clients, right? And that realistically is
There's the door. Yeah. So I mean, that's just the piece. Like, if you can equate D and door, like, just do it. And I think that's the piece where even here, exiting is probably more appropriate than monetizing. Monetizing, whenever we've done that in the past, we do have a relationship with that firm that is acquiring these clients or these referrals, if you will. You don't want to go blow up somebody else's firm, especially if you want to be friendly with them on the other side of this. So I think that's the piece where these D clients, they get a different letter. It's just like, thank you so much, good luck. And that's the piece that all of us have them. Even DBA has a few D clients, and it's just over time, A clients could become D clients. So that's why it is important to do this consistently in your firm, because grading does change. Things change with clients. They sell businesses and then become an orphan 1040, do it for a couple of years, and then you're like, oh man, I don't know what opportunity exists here. And so I think those are the pieces that this exercise should provide guidance for.
Yeah, those clients change owners. We're working with new people. Yeah, for sure. Frequency is important. Okay, so let's go. We know that, raising fees needs to happen every year. We need to be evaluating services. We're constantly tweaking like internal processes to be more efficient, but let's just spend some time talking about exiting strategies. We're coming up, it's August, we're coming up towards the end of the year here into Q4. So we'll walk through or talk through considerations for exiting clients first, then we'll just get into exiting services. We haven't really touched on that too much, Marcus, but you said a couple of these things already, monetizing or referring based on relationship. So we have a relationship with a firm that we're able to monetize clients. If you don't have that relationship, then, and there isn't anyone potential to form that relationship with, then it's just
that's just an excuse. Honestly, there are people out there that these clients would be a great fit for, and don't discount it. Don't say they don't fit anywhere, that's why I'm keeping them. That's an excuse in my life. So I would say, if you say we don't have a relationship with another CPA, like, you just need to meet the other people in your area. One, assuming you're not completely virtual. If you're virtual, there are other ways to meet really cool people that do very similar things to you and collaborate on an ongoing basis. But let's just say that this is a local area. One of the easiest things you can do to see what CPAs are willing to grow in certain ways is pull up Google, type in CPA near me. And that's going to show you all the CPAs in the area who are paying search engine optimization for different types of clients. And so you can actually start there and work down the list. And if you see a CPA that's just down the street that is accepting new 1040 clients, he's obviously paying SEO services for marketing and advertising, would they be open to a revenue share arrangement or an acquisition of this block of clients to achieve their results? They're spending money to grow that business line, and you want to exit that business line. So how can you make that a win-win for both sides?
One man's trash is another man's treasure.
I didn't want to go there. You know, you don't want to call people trash, Amy. So
Okay, I wasn't calling people trash.
yeah, you know, I think it's one of those where how you are structuring your business, the team that you're building. We saw this in DBA. So we carried some B and C clients a little bit too long, and that was fine until that tax season. Whenever our team was structured the right way, they had their ongoing monthly work, and then all of a sudden, these people showed up and they needed the tax returns done that we have done for them years after year. And that was the piece where, like, who has the availability to do that work? And if you go back to those capacity constraints, that's where overtime comes in. That's where burnout happens. So all of this to say, as you continue to reshape your business, it may not show up until it surprises you at a certain time of year, and you have to be ready to address it.
Well, let's talk about notifying clients and timing of that notification. So what are your recommendations there?
Yeah, we've always felt that the best time to notify clients that you're no longer going to be serving them is after the engagement has ended. So if that is an October filing and you're just like, hey, November 1st, these letters are going out, you want to time that before you send out engagement letters or tax organizers or anything like that. Like, that could just lead to confusion. But I will say, if it's a D client, you just want to send it after the engagement's done. That way that they can have plenty of time to go find their next provider. If you're doing something like a client block exit, I would say that Q3, Q4 is really the best time. You want to start having those conversations in Q3, kind of execute any agreement, and then Q4, toward the end of Q4, it's really shifting those relationships over from, you know, the tax world. You've gotten your fresh copy of UltraTax 2024, so you're ready to load in all those pro forma returns, and people are looking for work to do between holidays. So that's a great time to do that. But yeah, I think those are the pieces that, as far as timing is concerned, and we've done this 8 or 9 times now. If you have questions, just reach out. Rachel's on the other side. If you want a letter to send, we've got it. We've sent a lot of awkward letters in our time. Just get a copy of it. ChatGPT's out there too. I'm sure It's just as good as us. So there are plenty of excuses that we all have. I would just really, you know, challenge you to take the right action that's needed.
Yeah, look at the revenue from the D clients that you want to exit, and what can you do to make that up in the upcoming year?
You can go price increase our C clients. And it probably, like, you know, it's one of those things. So it just, once you have the data, then you can make the decision.
Yeah, in my years of helping firms analyze, it always was a price increase that would cover that cost. So, all right, let's talk exiting services, right? We've done this grading of clients, but we had an opportunity to analyze data and look at services that we're providing, right? And so some of the things that might have jumped out there was, you know, we have services that we're still providing based on things we did previously that we don't necessarily have capacity to continue or desire to continue. And so, you know, what we have here is if a service line represents less than 10% of revenue, it's a good pause to consider whether or not you continue offering that service.
Yeah, and obviously, hopefully you have that data to know how much your sales are per revenue line. If not, you know, you could become a client of DBA and we could help set your accounting firm up and have a team of 3 ready for you to do your accounting. Just let us know. But let's say you do have that data in front of you to know how much total services are for the year. If any service is under that 10% is what we've seen as a good, you know, threshold, and you're not looking to grow it. So if you are just starting out CAS or something that you're looking to grow and put resources in, that's different. But if you have an audit practice or in a test practice like we did in 2020 and before, and it was less than 10% of your revenue, it is time to exit it. You know, unless you just really have plans to grow a team, to grow that service line, it's not gonna make sense much longer. And whether that's valuation or, you know, it's just, there's a lot of partners in the market too. So once we exited and monetized our audit practice, then we had a partner in the market who we could refer things to. And, you know, it's just one of those pieces where they are really good at audits and we weren't, you know, and we got out of peer review and all the things that come along with. So maybe there's something in your firm that's a similar situation. So would highly recommend using that 10%.
All right, so we've looked at data to collect, how to analyze that data, grading system to use, and then action to take based on grade associated with that client. I have another poll that I'd like to share with you, and then some final items before we let you all get back to work and crank it on this 9:15 deadline.
So this is getting into the fun stuff, right? A lot of fun stuff's happening over here on this side. Obviously, we've got a couple of webinars that are coming up to kind of close out some of these conversations that we've been having. So obviously you grade your clients today and then you're like, what do I do with these clients? So we're going to talk about that on September 19th, touch on our team of 3 model for 2025, what they're really looking at and focusing on in the new year. And then we do have a live event in the Woodlands. I mentioned it earlier, our one in August. We're actually having April, sorry. We're actually having 2 events that week. That is election week. Hopefully we all survive after that. You know, there is a red button that will self-destruct the world. Hopefully we get on the other side of that. But that is a live event in the Woodlands. For some of y'all that are coming to the one earlier in the week, that one is reaching capacity and very limited seats, but we do have this other one. And then the others are just, hey, I'm looking for other stuff to do, other fun stuff. So all good things.
Perfect. Let's look at these results. So it looks like almost half of you have it on your list to register for these events. So we look forward to seeing you in upcoming webinars and also in the Woodlands, Texas.
And if you're coming to the one that starts earlier in the week, don't get confused by those dates.
All right, let's look at, we have a book recommendation. So Marcus, you mentioned this book when we were preparing for this webinar today. So what did you enjoy most about Surge?
Most of y'all have probably heard of Mike Michalowicz and Profit First Accounting and some of the other books he's had. This is one of his lesser known earlier books, but I just read it at the right time in our firm. Surge talks about timing the marketplace. And so this was a good read for me after a tax season. Rachel and I would go away and kind of determine, boy, that was brutal. Like, how much are we paying these people that actually stick around on the team? And we were in Mexico, and I'll never forget reading this book and thinking about tax returns in the way that, you know, do you exit some of the tax returns while they still have value on them? Or this book kind of equates that to, as a surfer, do you ride a wave all the way into the beach? And so if I was to keep that client relationship all the way into the end, and there's no more value, it's going to be much harder for me to go replace that revenue. And in the case of a surfer, you've got to swim all the way back out to catch the next wave. So what surfers actually do is they may ditch a wave before it ever goes all the way into shore, and then they don't have as long to swim back out. So Cliff Notes version of that, there's a lot more good stuff in that book, but I would highly recommend it if you're wrestling with some of these different clients or service lines.
If you've already read it and you have any thoughts to share, feel free to share those through that questions panel. I'd love to hear them. Yeah. We have just next steps for you. Rachel just chatted inside of GoToWebinar, so not in questions panel, but in that chat panel, she chatted the registration for the fall get together, which is the one November 6th through the 8th. It's in the back half of that week. For those of you that attended the event in April, there is the Together Again at the beginning part of that week. So your registration link is different. Check your inboxes for that registration link. This would be for any of you who have not yet attended the event. So your next steps, evaluate your client list, download our free resources. If you haven't checked those out, you have the one attached today that will also be available in our resources coming up soon. And then the events that we've already talked about, and super exciting announcement, we have launched our new brand. And so excited to share more information. It's coming out on all social platforms, or the 3 main social platforms, I'll say.
Yeah.
So.
And that's already dropped. So that has been a long time coming. Obviously, we appreciate everybody's feedback that's given it so far. The best feedback that you could possibly give is going out and liking or following those new brand pages so you can stay up to date on future webinars, future events, what's going on, what service offerings are being rolled out. And there it is. So Collected by DBA, there's a lot of meaning behind that name, and there will be more to come on that as far as cool things to share in the next few days, weeks. It's going to be a busy rest of the quarter.
It is, and Rachel's not doing anything over there. So the final slide I have for you before our thank you slide is just, this is our last event branded as DBA Firm, and so all of those future events to sign up for, you will see as Collected by DBA. So thank you all for being with us today, for joining us, for sharing feedback in the questions panel, answering the polls. We appreciate you all. Marcus, thank you for all your insight today. If you want CPE or you're getting CPE, we'll get those out to you in the next couple days here. So.
All right. Thanks so much, Amy.
Bye, everyone.